Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge and welcome to week number 44 of 2021. That's right, we only have 8 weeks left of the year. That is bananas. First off, I want to wish y'all a happy Halloween because you're probably seeing this on Halloween. I went a little out there with my makeup today. I picked a color and it ended up being very orange, and I was like, well, we're just gonna go with it. We're just gonna roll with it because it's Halloween, so it's great. You know what? I am missing one thing. There was one thing I was gonna do before I started. Give me 1 second. Bam! There we go. I meant to put my lipstick on right before I filmed, but I didn't. And then I also have my cute little pumpkins. My cousin actually made these for me. She has one of those like laser printers for like wood, and she made me little pumpkins. So anyway, there we go. I feel more festive. I don't usually get this pizzazzed for these, but you know what? It's the end of October. It's Halloween. It's not like I do any other kind of dressing up or everything. As close as you're going to see me get was my post that I did last week about my Beth Dutton-ness. And that really wasn't an outfit. That's more of an attitude that's represented, but that's okay. So we have a lot to get to. Some of these I believe I'll actually go through pretty quickly because I was still on a bit of a dystopian slash end of the world slash survival kick. So a lot of the books that I'm going to talk about, they kind of have the same setup, right? So there's only, you know, they kind of all have the same premise when we get to it. But yeah, this is the end of October. I'll also be filming my October wrap up, which should go up the day after this one. Because I had a wonderful month. Like, I couldn't have predicted that this month would be as good as it was and that I would have so many great reads to talk about. Before we dive into those, just real fast, we do have a new channel member. So happy to welcome Sunny to our romantic renegade level. I am so blessed to have you, Sunny. Thank you so much for choosing to support the Book Refuge. It means so much to me. The growth that this channel has had this year has just blessed me so much. So thank you for being a part of the family. And of course, as always, thank you to all my other channel members who make it worth it on the days when it doesn't feel like it. So let us dive into these books. I'm so excited to talk about some of these, and one that I have a bit of a rant to go on. So we're going to keep it moving. So the first book that I read last week was absolutely delightful, and I'll tell you a little story about it. So I guess we will talk a little bit. So Moonstruck came out yesterday. Came out on the 28th or something like that. Moonstruck is the third book in actually the Necessary Evil series. I was hoping that my copy would be here by now, but UPS hates me and has stopped leaving books outside my door. Like, I know they've had a rash of like thievery and stuff just with the world being bananas, as it would be, but like where I live, that doesn't really happen. So what it leads to is it leads to them leaving me a thing where I have to go pick it up, and then it takes too many days to get to it because, hello, I work and I can't always make it there. So anyway, it's a little frustrating. But Moonstruck came out, and the arcs for this went out last Saturday, and I'm not on Onley James' ARC team. I tried to get on it. I didn't know where to sign up for it. I couldn't find a form. I believe that it maybe is through her Facebook group. There are a lot of authors who use their Facebook group for their arcs because they know that they're fans and everything. So she had posted that the arcs were going out, and I did a little bit of a sneaky thing, and I was like, hey, I didn't get a chance to sign up for your arc, but if you're looking for more reviewers, I'm a big fan. I would love to read it, but don't, you know, I didn't want her to think that I was only doing it for a free copy, because I was like, I'm absolutely going to buy your book and read it the day it comes out. So, you know, but I asked, and ask and you shall receive. So last Saturday, I literally was filming my wrap up last week, and I got an email notification while I was doing it, or on my Instagram, that she had sent it to me. She's like, if you still wanted to read an arc, here you go. And I was like, ah! So I read it all in one sitting last week. Well, that's not true, because I actually had friends come over last week. So I finished all my filming and editing, and I had 2 hours with which to start the book. And when I tell you that it was physically painful for me to stop midway through this book, it was physically painful. This book was delightful. I gave it 5 stars. I may even give it 6 stars. I have to think about it. Here's something I'm noticing. I've been a little harsher on books as the year has went on. Like, I gave a lot of 6-star books at the beginning of the year, and it's not because quality has went down. I just feel like I've been holding each book up to the one before it, and so it's been harder for me to pick like 6-star books. So I may actually need to go back through some of my 5 stars and like look at some of those, because I was looking at my 6-star books because in December, if you're new to my channel, which, I mean, a lot of you are, I started this thing last year where I reread all my favorite books in December. So the month of December, because there's a lot going on, there's the holidays, there's just everything that goes on with that, I want to know that I'm going to have a wonderful reading month. And so basically, besides any new releases or things that I've already committed to reading, I reread all my favorite books. So it was the best experience that I had last year. And when I put out my December TBR, I know I've had a few of you reach out. You're like, can you tell me what your favorite books are? Because I want to read them with you or reread them. Absolutely, that video will come out because it will be my December TBR. My December TBR will be all the books that I'm rereading. But anyway, I went down a rabbit hole already, and we're already 6 minutes into this. Okay, point being, this was 5 stars. I don't want to spoil anything. This is a family of psychopaths. They are all adopted brothers who were adopted by this doctor whose name is Dr. Thomas Mulvaney, and he adopted these 7 boys who all showed psychopathic tendencies or different levels of psychopathy, different kinds of it. And he kind of had this idea that if these children who had all been through traumatic events to some degree and had, you know, that trauma was already turning their mind towards something dark, he wanted to be able to use it for a productive thing. So he adopted these boys. He's already like a billionaire apparently, because apparently doctors are billionaires. No, I'm pretty sure he inherited some money too or whatever. And he adopts these boys and uses their dark tendencies for good. So they kill bad people is what they do. He's taken their badness and turned it for good. And this one is about Atticus, who is our oldest brother. He's like, I think it said he's like 38, 39. I don't know, but I know he's the oldest. And he goes to do a job. Now, Atticus, I had seen some, you know, like, we don't get a super great view of him in previous books. There's a scene where, like, he doesn't really like what he does. Not that they all love it, but he doesn't like it because it's messy, and he feels like it's not that it isn't important work, but that it's kind of below him, and he just doesn't enjoy it the same way that some of the other brothers do, who really enjoy getting to, you know, stick it to the people who deserve it, right? And when he goes to do a certain job, he's going to kill this, like, rapist. He runs into a man named Jericho, who also takes out bad people. So Jericho is kind of the head of his family of ruffians and young people, and he really is the one who looks out for them, and he just is so into Atticus right away. He's a very dominating force, and so after they take care of this guy, Jericho really wants to fuck Atticus. Now, up to this point, Atticus has not thought that he was attracted to men. He's had he has had kind of a long time girlfriend who is a bitch and is kind of like fucked with him. He doesn't really enjoy sex. But something about Jericho literally has him, like, dropping his pants at this murder site. And now Atticus is like, who am I? But he's only hot for Jericho. So it really led me to feel that, you know, he's on the sexual spectrum than even he thought, because it isn't just like men in general, it's Jericho in general and the way he makes him feel. And this couple has a power dynamic that I was not expecting at all. As other books by Onley James, this one is spicy and sexy and delightful. Also, the same day that the arcs dropped for this book, we got the cover for book 4, which is supposed to be Headcase. And this one will be about Asa, who's one of the twins. Very excited. I need to move on because I talked for too damn long about this one. So I give this 5 stars, and like I said, this might end up being a 6-star. I need to reevaluate my life here, but I absolutely adored this book. It is a dark romance. Know your triggers going in. Next, I read Rules for Heiresses by Amalie Howard. I'll talk quickly about this. I had an arc for this book. I got the arc for this book like 6 months ago from Edelweiss. This is actually one I got from Edelweiss, which I don't get approved for books on Edelweiss very often, but sometimes I do, so I still try. This book also just came out. It came out this last week, so I waited until the last minute to read it. And the reason being, I mean, I've been very honest with that. Historical romances coming out in the last year or two have not worked for me. They've been frustrating. They have focused on things that I don't like, and so I've been kind of sad about it. So this is a follow-up book to The Princess Stakes. This is about the sister of the hero from that book, and she is kind of living as a man in another country, and she ends up running into her brother's best friend when she gets caught kind of cheating at poker, basically, and they end up being forced to marry because she gets ruined, even though she's been living as a boy all this time. And so they have this crazy, amazing chemistry, and I was so sucked into it. And as soon as they got married, our hero has plans that he doesn't share with her that, of course, come out at an inopportune time. And the fierceness of this heroine is completely wasted in this book. And that's what made me so angry. This had an amazing beginning. This had a little bit of a torture hero, kind of. He is believed to be a bastard, but yet he's the one who inherited, and so he doesn't plan to have an heir because he wants the title to like go back to, you know, to like pass to not him. And in doing so, it makes him pretty hurtful to our heroine, because though she didn't want to marry him, she didn't plan to marry anyone, she really is coming to feel that she has feelings for him, and so she just wants them to try to have their life together, and he's like, no, because I'm tortured. There's nothing original about this. I thought that there would be, so I was just disappointed. 3.5 stars. Moving on. Then I read Swan Peak, which is the next book after Swan Lake, which I read last week. I gotta tell you, when I was reading Swan Peak, I was very nervous. So I can't remember. What did I rate Swan Lake? I gave Swan Lake 4 stars as well. So this is a BDSM book. This is an age gap. This is an office romance. Our heroine has a severe eating disorder. She has been healing from it. There are some events in the last book that caused her to spiral again. Like, she's still actively struggling with her eating disorder. So many triggers in this, just so you know. I said it last week. I'll say it again. Take this very seriously. I don't struggle with an eating disorder, and it was tough for me to read, okay? I was not triggered by it, but I was like, whoa, this is a heavy level, okay? It's very intense. And in this one, they've decided to be together, and they decide to do a weekend together at one of his homes to really test out their dynamic. And there are some things that this author is doing that I did not know if she was going to have the, I don't know what any other word to use, the skill or the smarts to deal with it. I know that is like a very like rudimentary term, but that's what I was feeling, because she goes very far with this BDSM relationship, and it goes to some very uncomfortable places, and I was getting nervous. At about 40% into this book, I was ready to throw it down and DNF it and then cuss out this author. I actually said this in my review, and she actually commented on it, and I'll finish out what I was going to say, but at 40%, I was ready to chuck this. But because I was so angry and I just didn't like how things were playing out, I was like, I have to finish this one, because BDSM as healing is one of my favorite tropes of all time. One of my favorites of all time in a dark romance when it's done right. And if this was going to be done wrong, I wanted to rant about it. So I knew I had to finish it to do that. And I'm glad that I did, because the author was setting those things up to explain what was going wrong. And not just to call the heroine out for I'll just tell you, for topping from the bottom, which she doesn't even know that she's doing. This is the first time she's ever heard of BDSM, is the weeks that she's been doing her research about this. And she knows what topping from the bottom is, but she doesn't know what it like feels like, and that's what's happening when she's kind of making demands, and that it's something that maybe should have been negotiated from the front end so that it can be incorporated into your scenes instead of in the scene demanding things when you have a dominant who's not someone who, he's like completely a dominant. You know, he's not that kind of dominant who can handle any bratting at all, which I actually really like bratting when it happens and seeing how a hero handles it. And he is like, freaks out about it. He doesn't know how to handle like a bratting in a situation and doesn't realize that he should safe word out if it's not going the way that he wants it to go. He's trying to literally like push her to use her safe word, and like she doesn't need a safe word because she likes everything that he's doing to her, but he goes from treating her like his sub to treating her like a slave in a master-slave dynamic, not just treating her like a slave. She still has a safe word to use whenever. But what's really uncomfortable, especially if you're someone who reads BDSM, you know that in that moment where things went wrong, like he should have safe worded and then talked to her and said, no, you can't do it this way in a scene. Like, I don't enjoy a dynamic with a brat. And he didn't. Instead, he punished her. And though, because we're in BDSM, like she likes the punishments, they should never have went to the level they went. And so I'm reading this book and I'm literally starting to have an anxiety attack because I'm like, what the fuck is this author doing with these people? But it was supposed to be that way. And I know I've kind of spoiled a few things about this, but I had to share my feeling because I'm telling you, I was so ragey. Like, I was so ragey about this, but the author wants you to be. And if you're someone who loves BDSM and appreciates it for what it can do as a healing situation, the whole reason I read these books is I knew that it had BDSM as healing as a possibility because she's someone who has an eating disorder. And sometimes when you're in a dynamic that way and you have a dom who is taking care of your needs and kind of demanding that you eat and demanding your health and wellness is at the forefront, I was like, this has the opportunity to be the best thing ever. So, point being, that is something that the dom has to be confronted with, and that is like my catnip right there, because usually so often we're reading books where the dominant is completely confident, they know all their limits, they know all these things, all of it set out, and this is someone who he's never done long-term play with someone. He's only done scenes at a club, and for an hour, 2 hours, 6 hours where he's in control of someone's body, he doesn't have to really deal with the ramifications of being in a committed relationship with someone that he's trying to dominate. So I gave this 4 stars just because I need to see how this whole series arcs out. Both 1 and 2 came out right after the other. I don't know when the next one is coming. You know, her books really kind of just end. Not even a cliffhanger, they just end. So I was glad that I was able to go from 1 to 2, but we just ended at the end of book 2, and so I need to know where we're going. So I gave it 4 stars. But I will say it did not go to the terrifying level that I was afraid. I was like, what the fuck are we watching? What am I reading? It was better than that. Then I read Outnumbered by Shay Savage. I don't want to ruin this for you. I'm going to put up the cover, which has some hints, and I'll kind of tell you what this is about. This was another survival romance. This is our hero who he had been in jail as a juvenile because he murdered his father for abusing his mother, but then his mother turned her back on him because he killed her husband. She was in an abusive relationship that she was never going to leave, and he snaps and kills his dad, and he goes to prison. His mom doesn't stand up for him, and so he really gets the hammer thrown on him. But also he was 13, so he gets out. And then he moves to Alaska to be away from the world. He doesn't like being around people at all. He's lived there for quite a while. Then there's this girl. She tries to shoplift from the store that he's at. He ends up buying her the donuts she's trying to steal. And then she asks, she's like, thanks him. And he's like, I don't want to thank you. Just don't steal again. And she's like, well, fuck off. And so he leaves. The next day he's like hunting, and he comes across her literally like passed out in the road. It's snowing. And so he brings her back to his cabin just in time for them to like get snowed in. And he starts to discover some very interesting things about this woman that he's now locked up with in his cabin. And he's discovering that he might be outnumbered. So that's what I'm going to say. Here's the cover. Take that explanation for what you will. It was interesting. I gave this 4.5 stars. There was some suspense involved. It was pretty spicy. It was good. Then I read Escorted by Claire Kent because people would not shut up. And I mean that with love because I loved this book. I gave it 5 stars. But as soon as people saw me reading Claire Kent, which last week you'll know I binged a bunch of her books. I still have a couple more of hers to talk about this week too, but I read a bunch of her survival books. This one was recommended. This is a male escort and a heroine who is a well-published romance author, but she's never had sex. So she buys herself a night with this escort to lose her virginity, and it turns into a long-term client relationship for our hero as they both fall in love with each other. So this was 5 stars. It was really beautiful. It was very amazing to watch their relationship develop pretty much solely through sex for a good part of the book. I know that that's not something that works for everyone. They want to see the relationship built beforehand. But whenever you're reading a sex worker romance of any kind, you know that's not how it's going to go. Like, you know you're in for sex first, relationship later. And that's definitely what's happening in this one. Is this hero is, you know, doing his job to please her as they are falling in love. But neither one of them can tell the other that because it wouldn't be appropriate for the relationship that they're in. Then I read Breaking, which is a sequel novella to Escorted. I gave it 4 stars. It catches up with them a little ways after the end of the first one. Then I have my DNF, which I have to rant about. I had an eyelash in there. This is book 1 in the legal brief series by Emma Chase. So, quick story about this before I get into the rant because we got to keep it moving here. I have been recommended so many times in my book form and on videos and on Instagram to read Sustained by Emma Chase, which is book 2 in this series. So I realized that it was book 2. I got all 3 books on Libby and I was like, cool, I'm going to read Overruled before I read Sustained. I understand why people recommended book 2 and not book 1, okay? The setup for book 1. These 2 people are friends and colleagues with benefits. They're both lawyers. They're both defense attorneys. They have been fuck buddies for a good amount of time. Our hero is also a single dad. His high school sweetheart had his baby 10 years ago, but she didn't want to marry him when I think they were both just going to college or just starting college. She didn't want to get in the way of his career. And really, he wanted to marry her because he loved her and they were having a baby. And she just was like, no, we're not going to do it. So it's 10 years later. His daughter's 10 years old. And his baby mama, who is also like his fuck buddy when he goes home to visit his daughter, he'll also sleep with his baby mama. She's getting married to someone else. And he finds this out. And even though he, has a current fuck buddy who's also his friend, he decides he's going to go try to stop the wedding of his baby mama to somebody else. But not only that, he's making his current fuck buddy / best friend come with. And not only does he want to stop this wedding for his baby mama, I know I keep saying that, but that's what we're doing. He's not planning to even marry the baby mama. Like, he wants to marry her, but he's like, well, nothing has really changed in our lives. Like, I still live in DC and she still lives here. So even if I want to marry her, she's a nurse. She's not going to move here with me. But yet he doesn't want her to marry who she's going to marry. So I read 40% into this book, just as he was making his... No, wait. I'll tell this one other part. So his fuck buddy, she agrees to go with him. And when they stop for the night, because they have to drive, to his hometown, and they spend the night at a hotel, and of course they're sharing a bed, and he wants to fuck her. Still, he wants to stop his baby mama from marrying someone else, and still be fucking his fuck buddy. he's painted as this, like, good old boy from the South, and he's such an upstanding guy, and I just have this to say. No, I DNF this book so hard. Ugh. However, because I know that this was the book that people did not recommend to me, like, nobody recommended this book to me, okay? I'm not blaming anyone. They recommended Sustained to me, which we will get to in a minute. But I DNF'd Overruled, and if I didn't already like Emma Chase, like, if I hadn't read the Royal books and liked them, I would never read another book she read. The setup of that book alone makes me so ragey. But I didn't read any setup going in. I just knew, the only thing I knew is that they were, like, friends with benefits. So I thought it was going to be like a friends to lovers, which I'm sure it is. But no. No, Emma Chase. That is a disgrace. Okay, moving on. Then I read Rise by Claire Kent. This was the last book in her, like, Prison Planet series. This one was the guy who used to be on the caveman planet, and now he is on this planet where our heroine is an escort, and he ends up falling for her, but he doesn't understand how she can still keep wanting to sleep with everybody else, and we're trying to start the rebellion. I don't know. I gave it 4 stars. It's probably not really a 4-star book, but it was a novella length, and I read it quickly, so moving on. Then I read Moonshine by Kat Bostick. This was another survival book. This one is about a hero who his family was already preppers before the apocalypse happened. And in this one, okay, it's not really apocalypse. In this one, it was like the power got turned off kind of one, but not forever. But it was like just long enough that everyone like devolved. So there's still quite a few people in this world. They're just kind of like just enough that like regular world isn't happening. So that's part of it too, is that I didn't really understand how we got to the dystopian situation we were in with this one, because it was just like, oh, the power went up. Like, there's not an illness, there wasn't invaders, there wasn't like any of that stuff. Like, this has a very similar setup to Last Light, which was I love that book. But this one, I didn't really understand how we, like, got to this point. Anyway, but yeah, our heroine's traveling on her own. There's some men who are chasing her to do things to her. She gets saved by our hero. He brings her back to his place. But he kind of keeps her captive in the beginning because, number one, she's hurt. And number two, he thinks she might be a spy. Because the men who were chasing her, they're part of a group who's kind of been trying to coerce him into working with them for a long time because he has a lot of resources. As we said, like, his dad used to be a prepper, and so they have like an entire like greenhouse that produces lots of food. They have fields and underground bunkers and like everything that a prepper might have who's doing that. And so they've been trying to recruit him for a long time. And so he thinks she might be a spy to find out about him. So he kind of keeps her captive for a little bit, and then it goes from there. I give this one 3.5 stars, mostly because there was no relationship stuff until 90% of the book. And then even there was one sex scene, and it was kind of fade to black, and then like they were together. So this almost read, like legit, this almost read like a YA book, just for the beats that we set, because they were, I mean, it really is new adult, because she's 22 and he's 25, like they're not that old. So I don't know, it just, Last Light exceeded this book in every way pretty much. So I gave this one 3.5 stars. And then again, the setup of the world, I was just like, what? The world building was not good. It was not good. Then I read Guardian by Emmy Chandler. This was starting another Prison Planet series where I really was starting to wind down with those. But this one is, this woman gets in trouble, gets dropped on this planet, and it's a planet that's broken up into these different zones. So there's zones like 5 and 6, and they're right next to each other. And one of them is the women's zone, and one of them is like the men's zone. And so the women, they give the men a certain amount of women each time a new drop happens to keep them from overrunning them. So every time a drop happens, 5 women get given to these men. The women get to pick which man is their protector for 30 days. And at the end of 30 days, they have to pick a new one. And they like, And that man who takes her has to provide her with food and protection. But someone can take you from them by challenging, but they only allow one-on-one challenges so that they don't start a war. There's all these rules. There's all these rules. And our heroine, she actually is trying to protect someone she's only like 18 and she's very small. And so she picks the strongest guy who's kind of a loner to be her protector for the first month. And she demands that he also protect the girl in exchange that she gives him whatever he wants sexually if he will protect the girl. Which makes the other men, very angry that he's getting 2 of the women, even though he's only sleeping with 1. This was 4 stars. This was very tense. Like, you were very scared what was going to happen, and how are they going to escape from this? Because that's the thing, too. If you leave, and you don't stick to the bargain, then the men will overrun the women's area. And so you'd be sacrificing all the other women to the men, basically. So I give this 4 stars. It was pretty interesting. All right, then I read Sustained by Emma Chase. Here we are. This was wonderful. I gave it 5 stars. What is this setup? This is another one of the lawyers who works with the other 2 that were a complete fuck up. But he is a player. And this book starts with him possibly having syphilis. So he had hooked up with a woman at a bar. He didn't even remember her name. And then a few weeks later, she comes to his office and he's like, oh no, what's this woman doing here? I don't talk to them a second time. And she's not like asking anything from him. She's just saying like, do you remember why I wanted to hook up with someone? And he's like, no. And she's like, well, my ex-boyfriend had been cheating on me. And so I wanted to hook up with someone. And she's like, and he didn't just cheat on me. He gave me syphilis. You're the only person that I've slept with since him, but you need to go to the doctor and get on antibiotics because you might have syphilis. And so he doesn't blame this woman for it. It isn't even about this woman, but it does kind of shake him a little bit. And he's like, okay, maybe I need to stop just swinging my dick around. I'm 30 years old. Maybe I need to be a little bit more serious about that. And so his friends are like, well, you should try dating. Like, yeah, you have to see the woman a couple times, but then you could have an exclusive sexual relationship with someone. And he's like, oh, that sounds lame, but I can't sleep with anyone for 2 weeks anyway, so I'll go on a couple of dates, blah, blah, blah. Well, one night when he's on a way home from a date where he didn't get laid, and he's very sad about it, a kid tries to mug him. And he actually grew up on the wrong side of the tracks. He was in a tough place when he was a kid, and he catches this mugger, and he says, you can either take me to your parents so that I can talk with them, or I will have police arrest you and your parents will be called to the police station. So either way, we're going to talk to your parents. So he's like, fine. So the kid brings him home, and we discover that he's one of 6 children who are being raised by their aunt, who's only like 24, 25 years old. Maybe even younger. Maybe she's even 23 or something because she had like dropped out of college. Her brother, who is 15 years older than her, him and his wife died in a car accident, leaving behind their 6 children, ages 6 months to like 14. And she's been taking care of them and doing a pretty good job for a 25-year-old. Like, I just try to imagine just my sister's about to be 3 kids. And I would not be the one asked, by the way, not because I'm not stable, but just because I wouldn't be the one asked. But anyway, so he immediately just falls for this family, but he doesn't realize that he is. This is definitely a grumpy sunshine situation. And our hero just does not realize what he's into until he's in over his head. So he helps with, there is another kind of like legal issue that comes up, and he ends up really being this woman's friend. Like, he ends up being this young woman's friend, and he just falls head over heels for these kids and doesn't realize it. So eventually it's kind of like a friends to lovers too, because he eventually like asks her on a date, and he's like, wow, I'm so nervous for her. And I won't spoil anything else for you, but this was delightful. The conflict that happens, there's an external and an internal conflict. I completely believed his internal conflict because this is a guy who like didn't want kids, didn't want to settle down, and now he's literally falling for this woman who is baked in with 6 kids, 6 kids that aren't his. And so his internal conflict is totally fair, and it doesn't last too long, so it's okay. But anyway, 5 stars. And I completely understand why everyone recommended it to me, and we'll just forget that Overruled existed. Okay. Then I read Withering Hope by Layla Hagen, and nope, I guess I did still have a couple more survival. I was going to say this was the last survival one, but this was a plane crash romance. This woman is on her way to her wedding, actually. Her family and her fiance's family are very wealthy. Her fiance is a wonderful man. They've been friends since they were kids, and it's just kind of the next step for them to get married. And so she had to fly home for something, and now she's going to go back to where they're going to have the wedding. And so their private pilot, whose name is Travis, he is taking her there, and they end up getting in a storm, and they end up crashed in the Amazon rainforest. And they are there for 4 months trying to survive until the rainy season has gone down enough that they can try to make their way out of the jungle, because they're kind of trapped on this like high level of the jungle where it hasn't like flooded there, but they can't leave either because the water is too high for them to leave. So they have to try to survive for 4 months. And so technically this book has cheating in it because she is engaged. But I'll leave it to you based on the explanation that I've given you for this story, whether it's a cheating book that was okay for me. I gave this book 4 stars. This one was very depressing, I think, is part of it. Like, it still has an HEA, absolutely, but this was a tough one and very sad and painful for the amount of romance we get in it. Because, again, she's in love with her fiance, so there's a 4 months living side by side with someone, there's that. So this was good. Then I started the Bailey Brothers. I was asked, what happened is that Juliet from Smart Women Read Romance wasn't sure that she was going to be able to make the review for their Patreon group. Smart Women Read Romance is a podcast. It's also Justin Reads Romance from here on Booktube. She does this podcast with her aunt. They are dear, dear friends of mine. And Juliet didn't know if she was going to be able to finish the book in time. And I was like, I have it on audio. Let me read it really quickly. And I did. It's book 3 in the series. The second brother that we have, because the first 2 books are about one relationship, and then book 3 is called Unravelling Him, and this is about Evan, and I can't remember the heroine's name, but he is the second oldest. He's the second oldest brother, and he is a mechanic, and he definitely is the one who's the most standoffish of his brothers, and our heroine needs a place to fix her car. So she's actually a mechanic. I have such a girl crush on this heroine, okay? I should have remembered her name. I'm a bad person, but like, she has tattoos all over, and she's just she's the perfect amount of like quirky, but capable. Like, she's very capable, and like her kindness is almost a superpower. And I love that kind of heroine where just her joy and happiness, like everyone around can't just help but be drawn into it. And there's a bit of a road trip part at the beginning. There's forced proximity because she ends up staying at his house with him while she's working on her car. And then it's also a small town romance. So all the Bailey brothers just love her. And Evan, of course, like, is very resistant to the feelings he's having because of some past hurts, as well as he's just a very like distrustful person in a lot of aspects. Anyway, but I love this so much. I gave this 5 stars, and I have more to talk about them soon. Also, Claire Kingsley brings the spice when it gets time for steamy scenes, okay? Delicious. Then I read Wed to the Barbarian by Kiera Andrews. This is the first in a duet, where the second book is actually coming out on November 2nd, so we don't have too long to wait. But I loved Kiera Andrews a lot earlier this year. I read a lot of her gay romances that she came out. This one is a historical fantasy. And one of our heroes, Jem, he is kind of this like weakling prince who's going to be used for a political marriage to the barbarians. And our barbarian hero, is planning to, he doesn't want to be forced into this marriage. He thinks that the prince is like wimpy and not even worth his time, but they plan to use him for like a revenge plot. So he ends up marrying him and they bring him back to his people. And I have to tell you, the first half of this book was tough because it goes full like bully romance or like just really enemies to lovers. Like, and it's so sad because our young hero, Jem, he's the sweetest. Like, he's literally too good for this world. He's so precious. And he didn't have a choice in this wedding. He doesn't want to be married to this guy, but he's very attracted to him. He really wants to be with him. And our other hero, the barbarian hero, is like, I wouldn't fuck him if he was the last person on earth, which is a lie, but also just so hurtful to our sweet little Jem. And when the tide starts to turn, which granted, this is a duet and there is like a lot of groveling that the other hero has to do, I ended up feeling hopeful for the second one by the end of this. So I gave this 4 stars, even though for a bit there, I didn't know how it was going to feel because I was like, not too happy, but we'll see. It was a good start. Then I read Trapped by Alison Ames. This was another Prison Planet romance. Literally, it's the same setup as one of the other ones. I didn't like this as much. Gave it 3 stars. I don't want to waste time with this one. I'm not really recommending it. Then I read Rushing In by Claire Kingsley, which is book 4 in the Bailey Brothers. And this one is about... Is this one? Oh, shoot. I don't remember who this one is. But this is one of the firefighters. Evan? No, Evan was the one I said already. This one isn't Logan, is it? It's not Logan. That's the next one. Anyway, whatever. This one's a firefighter. And then our heroine, her name is Skylar. She is the daughter of the firefighter's chief, who, she's a writer, and she recently was cheated on by her boyfriend, who's also her agent. So she no longer has an agent, and she hasn't been feeling very inspired to write. So she decides to go and stay with her dad in Tillicum, where he's a police chief. And her parents had gotten divorced when she was very little, but she remembers a lot of the people in town, and not a lot has changed, even though it's been 20 years since she's been home. And in the beginning of the book, she actually hits our hero with her car. Like, he survived a forest fire, and then he's going for a beer, and he steps out into the road, and she hits him with her car, and his leg is broken. So she feels so horrible, but since he's not allowed to work for 7 weeks, he agrees to kind of like show her around town and to be her friend. And he tells the chief, he's like, nothing's gonna happen between us. I just want to be her friend. And the chief is like, no, absolutely. And the chief was actually like a father figure to the Bailey brothers because like they lost their parents when they were young. And so he is just like, it's a friend to lovers. I don't know what else to say. This one is also very spicy. There is rope used. This hero likes his rope quite a bit. And this was delightful. It was 5 stars. It was so much fun. And, like, there's just not a ton of angst in these books in the best way. Like, I just have the biggest smile. I had not been in the mood for, like, just regular contemporary much. And these ones are the perfect, like, small town contemporary, but still spicy. So, loved it. Then I read The Hunger by Jenika Snow. This is book 3. I think this is book 3 in her, like, werewolf series. This one was kind of a captor-captive situation because he smells his mate and he kidnaps her and takes her to a cabin in the woods. But also because it's like fated mate, like he doesn't want to hurt her at all, but she doesn't know about her heritage or that she is part lichen, and so he needs to try and convince her first. So this was good, 4 stars. Then I read Chasing Her Fire, which is book 5 in the Bailey Brothers. This one I believe is Logan and Kiera, I think. Yeah. And this one, I knew this was coming. We see the hate going on between these two. And at the end of the last book, they actually have a one-night stand together, okay? And it's a surprise baby book. This book is a surprise baby book. And I tell you, this is exactly my favorite kind of surprise baby. This is the optimal situation for me when there's a surprise baby, okay? They're people who already knew each other pretty well, but they like hated each other. And they have this one night stand. She immediately tells him she's pregnant. And then this book is about, are we just going to be friends raising a baby? Are we going to be acquaintances raising a baby? Are we going to raise this kid together? What's going to happen? It's a romance. Spoiler, it's going to go well. But then this one, like, our heroine has a lot of trust issues, and really the only person she really trusts is her best friend, who is married to one of the Bailey brothers, Grace, the one that I haven't read yet. I haven't read the first series, but like that's really the only person she trusts. And it's just so beautiful to watch her and Logan grow to care for each other and to care for their baby. And I adored this book. It was 5 stars. Absolutely beautiful. Then I read Hunter by Emmy Chandler. This was the second book in the Prison Planet series. And this was about the woman who wasn't sleeping with the guy who's protecting them. Her name is, I can't remember her name, but she thinks that she's getting away in the beginning or at the end of the first book, but she actually gets taken to a different zone on the planet, and she ends up in this kind of like Hunger Games situation, not with a lot of people, but she gets thrown into this like arena where rich people can pay to hunt people. And there happens to be another guy in there who's a prisoner, and she is willing to like trade her body for safety because she's like, that's what happened in the other zone. And like there's a communication barrier between these two. And so she's kind of like offering herself to him, and he's like, oh, she's offering herself to me. Okay, cool. And you know, stuff ensues. I don't know what else to say. This was okay. I gave this one like 3.5, 4 stars as well. And then the last book, which I finished last night, I did a reread of Sea of Ruin by Kresley Cole. I knew that in October I wanted to read at least one of the Immortals After Dark, and this is the one I decided to reread. This is about Rune the Baneblood, who is a dark fae, and he's on a mission to kill Nyx for the Moriere. And Josephine doesn't know who or what she is. She's has a very interesting amalgamation of powers, and she has had no one to explain it to her until she comes across Rune, who his blood and his bodily fluids are all poisonous to anyone. And then Josie bites him, and they both really like it. And surprise, she doesn't die. So what is she and what's happening? So this is book like 14, 15 in the series, so you can't really just jump into Sweet Ruin, but I absolutely love it. It's a 5-star read. When I read it the first time, I loved it even more this time, and I'm getting so excited for Monroe to come in January. I can't even handle it. So, all right, there we go. Those are all the books that I read in week 44 of 2021. I cannot wait. If you made it this far, give me a little pumpkin emoji down below. That would be amazing. And thank you so much for watching this video. I put up new videos 3 to 4 times a week, and you can watch some more of them right now. Bye.